Hi, and welcome to Rich's Kitchen. I'm here with my monthly cooking show in NC Media. The mood here in NC Media is a little different as usual. We are having a transformation here. At the end of the month, on the 28th and 29th and 30th, there is a horror film fest and haunted house. All ages are welcome. It's going to be a blast. There's so many things to see and do. Make sure you go onto the NC Media website and it will tell you hours, showtimes, and what you can expect. Come to our Horror Fest, 28th and 29th and 30th. As I've talked about on the past shows, I often, when I travel, try to take a cooking class or bring home cooking shows for bringing the travel home. Today, we're going to Bali. The last time I was in Bali was about 6 years ago, my only time actually. And amongst the things I loved in Bali was the food. There are big fancy restaurants, but my favorite things were the small family-run, what were called warangs. And this is usually not much more than a hut or a cement stone building on the side of the road, maybe 4, 5, 6 tables, a really simple kitchen, and sometimes the family living in the back room. The food was always spectacular, really affordable. You could order a couple appetizers, a couple main courses, an appetizer, and a couple drinks for 2 people, under $10. And I presume it's the same way now. So today we're going to do 2 very traditional Balinese foods. We're going to start with tempeh. Now tempeh is one of those vegetarian proteins that a lot of people will walk by and not be too sure what to do with it. A lot of people's complaints about tofu is the texture and the blandness. Not the issue with the tempeh at all. Tempeh is a fermented soybean cake, and it has much texture, and it uses the whole soybean, so there's much, much more flavor. We're going to start off with, and again, Balinese food mostly uses coconut oil. There's an abundance of coconut there. It's abundant and healthier. So we're going to start off with coconut oil. And Balinese food can be very spicy. I'm going to make a middle strength just because I've got the camera people here may not want it quite as hot as I like it. Most Balinese food has a base flavor profile of garlic, chilies, shallots. So we will start with all 3 of those. I'm using 2 kinds of chilies. I'm using a red chili and a green chili. Slightly different flavor profiles to them. Neither of these will be particularly overwhelmingly hot. And I usually have a little plate of extra chilies and things on the side, just so people can add more. You can always make things spicier. It's pretty hard to tone it down if you've got people with a variety of palates. I happen to like things pretty spicy. So we're doing a pretty fine chop on the garlic and the chilies and the ginger. Now the tempeh is a fermented bean cake of soybean. Takes quite a process to dry it out, but I think you'll find it will be really an enjoyable flavor. And if you've had experiences with tofu that you felt like it was just disappointing, this will change. This will change your experience of vegetarian proteins. I'm using a shallot instead of onions. Again, shallots are very typical in Balinese food. Generally, it's regarded as a sweeter, milder onion. Onions can, especially white onions, can have a habit of really overtaking the flavor of the dish. So the shallot is an onion flavor without getting into a situation where you're going to overwhelm the flavors. The tempeh, much like tofu, is pretty neutral. So when you're adding anything to it, know that that is what's going to be the main flavor. Not sure if the microphones are picking up on the sizzle, but there's a pretty good sizzle going on. I'm using a green and a red chili. And for those of you who like the taste of chilies, but not too hot, generally if you take the lower part of the chili, the part where the seeds are not, it's going to give you the chili flavor without nearly as much heat. I've got both the lower and the higher part. And so I'm using the lower part on this red chili. And this is a red chili of about a medium heat. And then this green chili, again, I'm going to use the bottom part of it so it's not too hot, is a Serrano chili. Also very popular in Balinese food. They will also use Thai bird chilies, which is a really hot chili, very tiny. Lots of good flavor. I'm going to add a little bit more coconut oil. And I've gone over ginger once before, and just wanted to say this again. One of the easiest ways of peeling ginger is just using a spoon and scraping the skin. Makes it a lot easier. You can see the skin just comes off nice and smooth. So again, this is very typical for Balinese food to have a base of ginger, garlic, and chilies in coconut oil. All three very traditional. Ginger can be grated too, which is really a nice way of incorporating it into food. It's a little bit easier actually than the chopping. The aroma in here, if we had smell-o-vision, you would be smelling the ginger and the garlic and the chilies now. Really wonderful smells in here. Yum. We're going to add a little salt and pepper. And this is where we start adding in the tempeh. So the tempeh will get really crispy, which is nice. The major complaint about tofu often is the softness, the squishiness. People don't like the texture. And you can see I'm cutting this fairly small, and it will get quite crispy and crunchy. The tempeh is really easy to work with. I really suggest you give it a try when you pass by it in the grocery store near the tofu section. I work with both, but when I'm looking for texture, tempeh is the better choice. We're going to let that get pretty cooking hot. Next, we're going to do the base layer. Now the tempeh with the sauce is going to go on top of a layer of cabbage and red bells and more shallots. So we'll take this off and we'll start heating up this other pan for the base. A lot of Balinese food, after the dish is done, much of the food flavoring comes from toppings. This will have a topping of basil and chopped peanuts and lime juice and green chilies, and green onions, excuse me. We're going to add a little soy sauce. I like the low salt soy sauce. You can always add more salt, but if you get things too salty, it's a little hard to get it undone. And we'll be doing the flavors in here, layering it slowly but surely. We'll be adding a little bit of ketchup, believe it or not, and a little bit of a dark carob syrup. This pan is now getting hot, and we're going to start the lower level that has the cabbage and the bell peppers and the onions and scallions. When we were traveling in Bali, we were blessed to have a really wonderful guide. And once he realized we were much more into the culture of the town and didn't really want to go to the big restaurants, we got invited to his home. And his father was a clove farmer, and we got a chance to see what it takes to be a clove farmer. Very rural scenario, very rural situation. But really, the people of Bali, I can't encourage you enough to spend some time there if you can. One of the best experiences in Bali, we went to these people, my guide's home, and they had a waterfall on their property. Let me get rid of this. That held a cave behind it. And we were able to sit in this cave behind the mud, behind the waterfall, and meditate. The tempeh is getting a little crispier, so we're going to add just a little bit, about a large tablespoon of carob syrup. That's part of the stickiness of this dish. And again, wish you could be smelling this, but it is wonderful smelling. And this is where we put in we want some sweet tomato flavor, and ketchup is actually one of the easiest ways to do that. Hope the cameras are picking up on the sizzle. The shallots are sauteing, so we'll add some orange and red and yellow bell peppers and the cabbage. And we'll get a yellow one in there for color. Much of our appetite comes from our eyes. And if we can make it that much more appealing to look at, it's going to be much more enjoyable flavor and experience just to eat. Dining seems to become an experience now, much more so than it was in the last many years. And people want to have a whole experience and not just eat and go. You can see this is getting darker. Now I'm going to give it a quick taste to see what the heat level is, since I added chilies and ginger and garlic. That's pretty good. I think we're going to add a little more of the carob syrup. I like the dark, a little thicker. Turn this down just a little bit. Now the cabbage for the base layer is just a real rough cut. We want it looking a little choppy, a little rough cut. Much of the Balinese Walrang food, as wonderful was not prepared with much presentation. So it's nice to be able to know you can have a very simple presentation and still have the food just so good. All right, this is coming up to temperature. Now, one of the other dishes that I wanted to do today involves a dessert, and not a real typical dessert for most of us. In Bali, they use yams a lot for a lot of food, and what I want to do today is a yam donut. It's fried, grated donut, grated yam with just a teaspoon of flour, a little bit of sugar. It'll be stuffed with a little piece of banana, so it'll be a surprise on the inside, and then rolled in sesame seeds. When I first saw this recipe, it said finely grated yam, which honestly, I'd never grated a yam in my life. And sure enough, they grate really well. And if you use the really fine part of the grater, it works great. You just squeeze out the liquid, which you'll see me do. When you're cooking at home, it's really a nice idea to have a bowl that you can set all your scrap in, so you're not constantly going to the trash. That's what I'm doing here. And now for grating, again, instead of using the big grating side, I use the small side. Let's give this another stir. And we keep the cabbage and shallot and bell pepper side pretty mild, since this part stays so spicy, so hot. The addition of the peanuts on top help cool it off. So we'll start grating this yam. And you'll be tempted to use the bigger side, but don't. The donuts don't stick together very well if it's a bigger grate. There's only about a teaspoon of flour in these donuts to hold it together. So unlike traditional flour donuts that are light and fluffy, this is made out of a potato, and it is a heavier donut. The only ingredients are a pinch of sugar, the yam, and being fried. Any other additions to it that I'm doing to it, the banana on the inside is a little extra bonus. With these donuts, you can actually create any other filling you want. I've done them with little chocolate chips on the inside, or dipping sauces. Maple syrup works really, really well. See, I don't want to forget about my other dish here. We're going to add a little salt and pepper to the cabbage. And we're going to cover it. That way the cabbage gets tender. The tempeh is still cooking away and getting crispy. Perfect. That's looking great. We'll grate a little bit more of the yam. All right, let's see if that's enough to make a few of these donuts. There's a fair amount of moisture in the yam, so you want to squeeze most of the moisture out. You don't have to get it dry like sawdust, but you do want to squeeze out most of it. And then, unlike anything you've done with the yam before, we're going to mix a little flour, a little sugar, and knead it just as if it's dough. We have just a little bit of sugar, brown sugar, just a little more flavor, a little more molasses flavor to it, and just a little bit of flour as a binding agent, because I think the yams that exist in Bali have a little more starch, because they don't add flour to theirs. And as I've made them here in our country, it seems to need a little flour as a binding agent. And for those of you that have made bread, we are basically just kneading flour, yam, and a little bit of brown sugar. And the yam will soak up all the sugar. And make into a very dough-like substance. You know, I'm going to grate a little bit more. I got to make enough of these donuts for our camera crew. They always get to eat everything I make, and I know these are going to be popular, so I can't take the chance of not having enough for everybody. Very good. Now I'm going to transfer the tempeh that's already cooked actually into a dish, because I need to use this cast iron pan for making the donuts. Hoping you get to hear the sizzle. Transferring into the cast iron pan for this to finish off gets a little hotter, and this will be a better pan for cooking the donuts in. Again, the donuts will cook again in coconut oil. It's really the oil of choice in Bali. And again, sometimes it's done in a very big fryer, real deep, lots of oil. I'm going to flatten ours out a little bit, so we don't have to quite soak it in so much oil. It'll be a little more of a flattened pancake, or a flattened donut. Okay, so, and the surprise in the donut is going to be a little piece of banana. Now, to brighten up the cabbage a little bit, I'm going to add a half a dozen or so of little cherry tomatoes. It just adds a freshness to the cabbage. Cabbage sometimes can be a little heavy feeling, and this will perk up the taste of the cabbage. And it's a pretty common thing to do to cabbage dishes, to add a fresh note at the very end. And you can see just how pleasing this is just to look at. On the banana, we're cutting really small pieces. Like just a coin, and then cutting the coin in half. And what we're going to do with the yam is take a ball, just like you're making a regular dumpling, and you make a little hole. Take your piece of banana, hope you can see this, and stuff it inside, maybe a little bit more of the yam. Really gentle. Remember, it's not floury dough, so you want to be very gentle. And the final step to finish off is to roll this in white sesame seeds. Very gentle. Sometimes you need to hold it together a little bit more again. And into the hot oil, and a little bit of a press. And we'll do it again. And again, this is just the yam. A little sugar, a little flour. These go together so quick, so easy. I've done these at home as a surprise in a matter of moments if I have an extra sweet potato at home. And again, roll it in the sesame seeds. Place it in the oil and give it a little bit of a push. The addition of the banana is my idea. You can certainly add in anything or leave it just as a regular plain donut. As a dipping sauce, maple syrup is really good with these. Caramel would work really well also. Yeah, we'll end up with 4 of the donuts. You get a little piece of banana on the inside. Smelling really good in here. Okay. Okay, we're going to start putting together the plates. So in this pan we have the shallots, the bell peppers, the cabbage, and the tomatoes with a little bit of salt and pepper, a little bit of soy sauce. And the spicy tempeh on top. And we want to give it a little bit of a, like I said, Bali has an awful lot of things that they do as toppings on their food. So we're going to start with a little bit of lime juice. We will go with some chopped peanuts. Just a little bit of unsweetened coconut. And a little bit of basil, just torn. So there we have sweet, sticky, spicy tempeh and sauteed cabbage. Probably time to turn these things over. Want to remind everybody about the Horror Fest at the end of the month at NC Media, 28th and 29th and 30th. All ages are welcome. Go to the website ncmedia.com or .org to see what the schedule is, when the shows are, and what you want to experience. It's an exciting event, and it's the first time after 2 years off that we've been able to do this. So Ramona and everybody else here is quite excited about pulling off the Horror Fest again. So these are nearly done. And again, they are yam, just a little bit of flour, a little bit of brown sugar, just a little bit of flour, and then rolled in white sesame seeds. I'm going to take this off the heat. And again, I can do a little bit of coconut. And again, I use coconut oil for all the cooking on both parts of this and this. Coconut oil is certainly the oil of choice in Bali. I welcome you to try anything that I've made in my past shows or this show. If you ever have any questions, you can certainly contact NC Media about my cooking show, Rich's Kitchen. Thanks very much. I'll be back next month. Thanks.